what have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Said a man possessed by a legion of demons. Speaking of super creepy demon people, televangelists. Specifically, televangelists with private jets. A couple of years ago, the televangelist Gerasene Demoniac was sharing with his friend and fellow TV preacher Kenneth Copeland his latest goal for his international ministry, which was to purchase a Dassault Falcon 7X, which is a jet with the capability of flying at speeds just shy of 600 miles per hour, with a fuel tank range of nearly 7,000 miles, enabling him to reach almost every spot on the planet, and, I quote, to spread this gospel as quickly as possible. Only problem was, the Dassault Falcon 7X costs $54 million. So Duplantis and Copeland, who likewise knew the virtues of jets for Jesus, were together soliciting their television audiences to help fund the project. And as you can imagine, while they were justifying the purchase and making their case, they said a couple of memorable things. Two of them have stuck with me more than the rest. The first was Duplantis when he admitted that, yes, his 3 other jets were working just fine, still burning up miles for the Lord, but that Falcon 7X is the kind of jet Jesus deserves. And then the other comment that stuck with me was when Copeland started talking about just how impossible it is to go around and properly preach to the lost sinners of this world while having to sit next to them on a common commercial jetliner. Describing the experience as being, and I want to get the accent right, he's from Texas, so this should be. The experience is like being in a long tube filled with a bunch of demons. End quote. And similar to how a televangelist might feel about having to fly the friendly skies with other people, polite mainline American churches like ours often do what we can to avoid the subject of supernatural beings aside from maybe God. Unless, say, we're talking about a heavenly host around Christmas time. Perhaps it's because such things as possessions and exorcisms seem too primitive and superstitious, or they seem like embarrassing ancient misdiagnoses, or maybe that stuff is just a little too creepy to touch on Sunday morning. Meanwhile, it should be noted that we have church siblings around the globe that take such ideas seriously. And there are plenty of congregations in this part of the world, even in Chicagoland, you don't need a private jet to get to them, that take passages like these seriously. And angels and demons are concepts that make up an enormous part of their worldview and their religious experience. Today we're going to explore this text that I've never preached on before. It did not make the Revised Common Lectionary. We're going to explore this text featuring some of the more fantastical and disturbing material that you'll find anywhere in the Bible, including the tragic loss of God knows how much bacon. And I do want to take it seriously without weighing in as to whether or not such things as demons actually exist. As an aside, I have to admit that I do believe in some pretty wild things that I reaffirm every Sunday when I recite the Apostles' Creed. Some pretty gnarly stuff in there when you think about it. I believe that. I also don't know everything. And I have witnessed, as many of you have witnessed, people's lives seemingly overtaken by powerful forces like greed and the love of inanimate objects, anger, fear, wounded self-perception. The author and pastor Nadia Bolz-Weber has done some really amazing work relating her personal struggles with addiction and depression to a demon, personifying it, even giving it a name. She called her depression Frances. But as far as this text goes, I believe the reality of demons is actually neither here nor there. Because even though there is an exorcism in this passage, and it is a pretty eye-catching piece, I don't think this passage is actually focused on that at all. Whether or not these events literally happen, I believe Mark has chosen to include this story as a means of illustrating the absolutely uncontainable love of Christ, and to talk about what kind of people he invites into the kingdom of God. And so out of Mark's world, we are presented with the least likely candidate, who himself poses the question, what do you have to do with me? And leaving us with this conundrum to sort out. Is there anyone not welcome in God's eyes? Is there anyone that we don't really need to worry about? Anyone so far out there or different, so other from me, that I can just put up that wall? I can buy that jet? I can't buy that jet. And not have anything to do with that. And the way that we can tell Mark is making such a point with this encounter between Jesus and the man that we call the Gerasene Demoniac is with how every single detail about this guy adds up to a man separated from Jesus by every worldly measure, including his location, which is impossibly physically embellished. The text says Jesus hops right out of a boat after crossing the Sea of Galilee and is now in the land of the Gerasenes. Well, the village of Gerasa, which today is the current Jordanian city of Jerash, is a 30-mile walk away from the Sea of Galilee. There's no other major body of water next to it either. It is deep into rocky hill country. The place named in the text doesn't make any literal sense. So either Mark was a bad geography student, which is possible, but he's an amazing author, so I don't think it's that. And rather, it's that he is symbolically transplanting Jesus inside of a region that by all rights, Jesus, the Jewish Messiah, shouldn't have to be in at all, because Gerasa is smack dab in the middle of Gentile territory. That fact would not have been lost on many of Mark's audience, but just in case there are these other details reinforcing the otherness of this place, such as a herd of 2,000 pigs hanging out in the background, which is livestock that you would never see in such large supply in Jewish territory. And then there's the name that the demoniac uses for Jesus, Son of the Most High God, which was not a Jewish term for anybody, even for the Messiah. So religiously, ethnically, and geographically, this place is a place that Jesus does not belong. And in a million different ways, along with his proximity to 2,000 pigs, the man himself is, according to just about every Jewish law you can find, ritually unclean. The bruising with stones is a forbidden practice in Deuteronomy, as it was a habit of other religious cults to do so while petitioning their deities. Another law forbade contact with the dead without specific precautionary measures, followed by elaborate cleansing rituals afterward. And this man lives amongst the dead. And of course, the spirit or spirits, as it were, possessing him are themselves deemed as unclean. So we also have ritual and purity boundaries separating him from Jesus. And then, on top of all that, there are the things separating the demoniac from all of humanity. Many of those things deeming him unclean under Jewish law are also just frightening. After all, we're talking about someone who sleeps surrounded by graves when he's not climbing up mountainsides and howling day and night. He's ridiculously strong. You cannot even chain this guy down, and the unclean spirit possessing him names itself after what might be the only thing scarier in Mark's world than a supernatural being that he can't see, which is the elite fighting unit that allowed Rome to conquer the entire Mediterranean, crushing anyone who would dare stand against it. And once again, huge herd of pigs lurking in the background. And you know they're just making creepy pig sounds. And so my initial gut response, my skin kind of crawled when Jerry read it a while ago, and I've been reading this thing for the past 2 weeks, right? My initial response to this guy? Pass. Count me out. I would want none of that. For starters, every ounce of self-preservation in me is clearly stating, I don't think so. Quickly followed by, he's not my problem. He could be dangerous. When is his village going to step up and do their work? And that's followed by my best efforts to write him off, concluding with what would no doubt be a very successful attempt to push him away and pretend he just simply is not there. For I have avoided people in my life for far less. I have created distance with others for far less than this. I've written people off for much less. And I've forgotten other people are people for less than that. And this, I believe, is Mark's point. Because anyone with any common sense or understanding of how the world works, how it's organized, will likely do what we can to draw boundaries and separate ourselves over any one of those issues and a whole host of others. Human beings are very efficient at dividing ourselves from one another, demonizing that which is other, leaning into our differences. We conjure up legions of excuses, and we blind ourselves to the fact that every face we see has been made in the image of the Most High God. But Jesus, whose latest demonstration of power in the last chapter was to calm a storm and subdue nature, so he has options. He did so on his way to seeing this man that he did not have to see for any earthly reason, except for the fact that this man needed somebody to see him. And so Jesus leads his disciples impossibly deep into territory they have no business being in, and he crosses every other boundary possible to say, this one, even this one that the rest of the world may have written off and treated as if he has no humanity, he belongs to me as much as any of you. What have I to do with him? Everything. There is not one person alive unworthy of my sight, my time. No one is unclean in my eyes. Everyone is lovable, and I'd go to any lengths for any of you. I'd even get myself into a long tube filled with demons for the sake of reminding any of you people how much you're worth. I think that's what's going on. And so I don't think that this is a story about demons. It is a story with demons in it, but it is about people. how Jesus sees even the folks no one else wants to. People we would say he doesn't have to. And people we hope that we don't have to. And wouldn't you know it, when the man is restored and his village finds out what has happened, they don't do that. Right? They can't handle it. They get upset about all the pigs, which is understandable. That's 4,000 pork butts wasted. And then they see the demoniac sitting there clothed, calm, and healthy, and they cannot handle it. It says that they're afraid, which I can relate to. And I can only imagine that there might be some guilt in the mix. And then there's that unsettled feeling, too. When you had things organized in your head, when the way you had people labeled is all of a sudden disrupted. Whatever hodgepodge of feelings they all have about a man being given his life back, what do they say? It says they began to beg Jesus to leave. We were doing fine without you. I'd rather have my pigs back. We don't need your help. Please, go. And so he does. Not before commissioning the demoniac to become the first evangelist to the Gentile world. Spreading the good news of God's mercy for all as quickly as possible. And then Jesus and his disciples go back across the Sea of Galilee, back into Jewish lands, so that he can continue loving on folks there. Folks that many of us would just rather not have to deal with, even though the Son of the Most High God